think for me, most businesses struggle to migrate mainly because there's so many different stakeholders involved in the process. If you think you've got CEOs who've got a strategic vision, you have CFOs who are in charge of the finances, and obviously in the past, alongside their IT directors, they've already been sold a vision of what was possible by another provider. So they've invested a lot of time, an awful lot of money into that process as well, to then really the awkward realisation that the system isn't delivering what you need it to. One takes bottle to actually make that claim that maybe the decision you made originally wasn't correct and you've maybe been missold a platform or a solution. And then it takes a leap of faith almost in a way to buy into a new partner or provider who on paper may be arguably making the same promises that you've been made previously. And I think quite often the kind of attitude of better the devil you know, you feel safer staying with the provider you've got, in fear of it being disruptive to systems that are already working in some way for the business, albeit knowingly compromised and not working at the full potential. There's a whole heap of risks in staying with your incumbent platform and provider. As I say, I think human nature is sometimes you think it's safer to stick with it, you think it's safer to not cause any level of disruption to the business. The reality is though, how much you do have to compromise and some of the concessions you're making, what is the true cost of that to the business? And sometimes that's hard to quantify and it's not knowing what you're missing out on. What I can give you some assurance is that there are other systems and other providers and other solutions out there which are working way beyond where you are, which are continuing to evolve and move with the times and technology. So if anything, it's not only the cost of what you're missing out of in the moment, but how much you're continuing to fall behind the competition. So when a business makes the brave decision to move across and migrate to a new platform, I think it's very much dependent on the experience the solutions provider can offer. You do hear some migration horror stories out there. However, if you choose the right partner with the right solution and the right offering for you, and the right energy as well in terms of buying into the process with you, where they're really on your side to ensure the most optimised outcome for your business, it's really met with pure delight from customers. So I think all that inherent fear that sits there about making the decision in the first place really leads to a whole new world for them in terms of what is possible and the art of the possible in digital commerce. So at Symphony Commerce, we understand that there isn't really a one-size-fits-all approach to migration. It's very much about getting to know the customer at a very granular level, understanding their needs, understanding their aspirations for where they want to take the platform, and then working with the customer or the client in partnership to get that delivered in as short a time as possible, the least disruptive way possible, and also in a very cost-effective manner. Because I think quite often one of the barriers to migration is the cost. People think there's a huge cost associated with it. At Symphony Commerce, we always try our best to minimise that cost to a sensible level with the system, the features and the functionality that we've developed and the process we've got for migration as well. That's also backed up in the case studies that we've got from clients that we really do make the migration process as seamless as possible for the businesses and brands that we work with. I think if you are considering migration and you genuinely don't know where to start, I would encourage you to do a lot of research in the first instance. There's a lot of papers, thought leadership content out there, not only from Symphony Commerce, from other providers as well, that will act as your guide to migration to an extent. I would encourage you to do a lot of homework, ask difficult questions of the systems providers that you've got out there. I would also encourage you to speak to customers that have been through the migration process as well. I think there's nothing better than hearing from another business brand who is truly impartial to the process that's been through it, who can give you some reassurance on the promises that are being made from the solutions partner or provider. I think probably the biggest misconception around e-commerce migration links to the cost side of things, because I think many providers out there will hit you with a huge chunky fee, and whether that's tens or sometimes into the hundreds of thousands of pounds, that can be an instant turn off for businesses and brands out there that are sensibly considering migration. So I think for me, understanding where that cost comes from, the breakdown of that cost at a granular level of how they're going to be spending their time to migrate your system, your products across to the new system. Don't be afraid to challenge it as well. I think we find a lot of Symphony Commerce that the cost doesn't need to be as heavy as it is really. So we try to price that sensibly where possible, incorporate it into subscriptions obviously to minimise cash flow implications as well. I think instinctively you know when you're starting or have outgrown your platform with the level of compromises that you continue to need to make. That could be patches, it could be bolting on other providers, other solutions, it could be manual workarounds and fixes to get around issues that you know you've got. So there's a whole heap of different issues that build up over time, and it's not normally a compound effect of all these smaller issues that will lead to that bigger realisation. I would also say instinctively you just know. You know that you need to be looking out there, and as I said earlier, I think it's that braver decision then to take that leap and see what other more better fitting solutions exist. I think the hidden costs associated with outdated systems are vast, and I think it links back to being sold the dream at the beginning. So you'll see on a lot of solutions providers' websites speaking about out-of-the-box features and functionality. Whether these are real features that truly exist or these are features that are on the roadmap for development at a later date quite often is up for discussion, and what you don't want to find yourself is funding the development of features that are falling later on the actual solution provider's roadmap. So I think if you find yourself where you have ad hoc requests for changes or adaptations to your system and you're constantly being hit with POs, proposals, scope of works and developer hours to achieve that, you've got to question how much of that truly was out of the box and how much of that you're paying to be bespoke developed for yourself. I think ultimately it anchors back to operational efficiency. So you could speak about faster load times, you could speak about not having to compromise over the number of products or SKUs, but ultimately all of this links to the actual end customer experience. So in the sense of how seamlessly you can enable a customer to transact with your business online. And typically you see that in the results obviously in the sales that are being processed in terms of the volumes and frequency through the website. I think the question itself is interesting when you say what's Symphony's approach, because we don't have that one-size-fits-all approach. So we very much work with the businesses and brands that we're partnering with to understand their corporate goals, their business goals, their customer goals, their marketing goals. We really try to get under the skin of the business to understand at a very granular and detailed level what they're looking to achieve. That then informs the steps, the time frame and our approach to migration to ultimately ensure that the solution that's delivered at the end absolutely nails each one of those objectives we spoke about at the start.